Good morning. I'm your service coordinator this morning, Joanna Long, a member of this congregation. Welcome to all of you, near and far, dear and soon to be near. And if you have not been here before, we'd be delighted if you would sign the guest book that is in the back. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, please do so. If you want to wave a hand. Yes, please. Oh.
Hello, I'm Monica. I work at the library in the children's room. I'm subbing for club today.
And Monica's going to be with the children. So we're really, really glad to have her here. Our minister, or whoever that apparition behind me is scheduled to give the reflection this morning, so hold on to your seats. We still have a number of COVID precautions that we are tending to. One, everybody's got a mask, and we all know why. And we sing gently through the mask. I get to take mine off to talk to you. That's one reason I'm talking to you. I'm so glad to get the darn thing off. Please turn off any cell phones or anything else that beeps or howls or rattles or moans, and put it in silent mode. After the service, there will be a gathering on the porch for more goodies than usual in honor of the day. Next Sunday, November 6th, we will welcome Scotty Taylor to share their reflection entitled Being Binary in a Non-Binary World. If you ever feel a bit confused by terms, labels, and pronouns people use, this will give you a bit of an education about gender-fluid people, and in this case, what life is like for someone living in Vermont. Please invite anyone you think might be interested in this subject to join us. It'll be an opportunity for growth and understanding for all. Mary Jean Taylor, Scotty's mother, will be service coordinator for the next Sunday. There are other important notices in your service. Don't forget to order your red flannel hash dinner if you haven't already done it. They'll go on selling them till they run out, but you might want to do it before Friday, which is pretty much the deadline. And you call Ann Winia for that. The number is in the order of service. And Sherry Belisle has a message.
Hi, if you're relatively new to North Chapel, and in case you haven't heard, we're having 3 meetings after church. This is the first one about meeting each other and getting to know this strange minister we have. It'll be outside in the sunshine by the pizza oven, and I have some games for the kids while you're doing that. And refreshments. A light lunch, yes.
I don't understand the strange ministry. I guess I am he, the strange one. And I just wanted to say that after our chalice lighting, I neglected to put it into order of service, but we're going to have a story for all ages. So just in the order of service, we're going to have a story right after the chalice lighting. Thank you.
The opening words are by William Shakespeare, but first, a small introduction. The 73rd sonnet finally came particularly to my attention because there was one line that played around in my mind: bare ruined choirs, where late the sweet birds sang. And 25 years or so ago, we went from a Cambridge conference to Ely Cathedral and went in the Lady Chapel, and the choir was ruined. Cromwell's men had been in there and knocked all the heads off all the angels. And I thought, oh my, Shakespeare had seen things like that. Henry VIII was up to the same kind of mischief or worse. So I thought, well, I don't know, that's not the first line. And this is 25 years ago, so I couldn't just Google it. Which sonnet is it that's got this line? It's not the first line. So I went back to Cambridge and happened on the street to meet my dear friends Jill and John. And I said, this line, bare ruined choirs, which sonnet? And they looked at each other and their eyes twinkled, and in unison they said, that time of year thou mayst in me behold. That was it. They both knew it. So now I know it by heart when I'm old, as the sonnet says you will be. And so I have a crib sheet. This time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs, where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self, that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long.
Hi. What? In my home church in New Jersey, there was a man named Howard Dean who would tell a story of the green-eyed dragon with the 13 tails. And he would tell it every year, and he'd say, beware, take care of the green-eyed dragon with the 13 tails. And we never forgot it. I am still terrified of the dragon. Sherry, can you help me take this thing off my face?
Let me get used to it.
Well, it's dancing on my nose.
No. Wait a minute, where'd it go?
You put it on there.
I know.
There you go. Thank you. Will there be peace in the heart? Will there be groundedness? Oh, let there be brave peace, so our gentle spirits can rest. Scatter beneath our feet, beloved, the beauty of life's blessing. Scatter beauty like rose petals, like autumn leaves descending. Winds, fill the sails of our spirit with the power to push us on, with the might to lift us higher, and when we fall, may we fall in grace, like the leaves that have fallen all around us. So many leaves have fallen. Dear ones, I have some harder news. There have been 3 deaths in my extended social family. A dear friend of mine from out west and a colleague lost his beloved mother. By grace, she died in peace. A second dear friend and the loving wife of the first lost her father, and this took place within only hours of the first loss. A third dear friend who's now living in New Zealand decided to take what resources she could muster and fly herself, her husband, and their young son to the States to support these 2 dear friends of ours in their grief, having known them both for so many years. After these world-crossing plans were all set, another person who is dear to us, someone who is close within our collective circle of Unitarian Universalist youth group friends and family, another who was dear to us all passed on. He was in his 50s. He left behind his life partner, a love that he had known all of his life, a love that they shared since our teenage years. She's beautiful. Even in her grief, she shines. Fully aware of how precious and how lucky she has already been in life, and even as she is moving forward without him, which is for her right now unimaginable. She's working on it. It will take time. Healing takes time, but it is what we do. Our bodies, our souls know how to do this. We know how to heal like water nose down. But how do we do this? How do we love bravely into the darkness? An artist writes, death took the husband of a neighbor of mine on a highway with a drunk at the wheel. She told me, keep your clean hands off the laundry he left and don't tell me that you know how I feel. She had a tape that he'd sent her from a Holiday Inn that she never played much in the day. But when I heard him say, I love you, from the window at night, I just stayed the hell away. There's a hole in the middle of the prettiest life, so the lawyers and the prophets say, and not your father and not your mother and not your lover is ever going to make it go away. And there's too much darkness in an endless night to be afraid of the way we feel. So let's be kind to one another. Kindness is real. My friend and her family from New Zealand stayed with me for a lovely night in East Barnard, and we celebrated life together, slurping down some potato leek soup that I made next to the open fire outside, and eating up all the fried chicken and salad that I prepared and could offer to them. And when we were just about done, the young one, my friend's son of 14 years, swiped the last remnants of salad dressing, salt, and oily spices off of the bottom of the plate with his forefinger. He was eating the very shadow of the meal, much to his mother's disgust. So she chastised him, and she was right. It was a little bit disgusting. I could not possibly have been happier or more proud to have fed her beautiful boy something that he enjoyed. We all met when we were all his age, when we were all about 14 years old. And when we were that young, we did more than our fair share of disgusting things. So making fun of the mama bear taking a stand for proper manners with her son was particularly delightful. It was satisfying for this young man's father and me, and we laughed in the face of great sorrow, and that made the tears easier to follow on. Scatter beneath our feet, beloved, the rose petals of your grace. Winds fill the sails of our spirit with the power to push us on, with the will to lift us higher. And when we fall, may we fall in grace. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, October the 30th, and it's one day before Halloween, All Hallows Eve or All Saints Day, the masking holiday when the veil between this world and the sweet hereafter grows thin enough to cross. Restlessly returning to us from the spirit realm beyond us are ghosts and goblins of those who came before, and they walk with us for a while and they talk with us, shocking us into the reality of living with all of its tricks and treats. Shocking us. You know, there's a group of seasoned ministers who tell dorky tricks, and they pull dorky tricks on younger ministers out in the Midwest. For a conference, we gathered in a professional assembly, 100 of us or so. It was very formal. We sat at tables in a large room. We heard from scholars who read academic papers about theology, and they had critical respondents. We dressed up for the occasion. On the tables before us were copies of our hymnal, the proceedings started off with the singing of a hymn, For All the Saints. It starts pretty on the upbeat. There's a downbeat, and it says, For all the saints who from their labors rest, who thee by faith before the world confessed, thy name most holy be forever blessed. Hallelujah, hallelujah. It was also very solemn, and then those seasoned ministers in the know who would prepare the second verse by slamming down their hymnals on the table, scaring us half to death and shocking us into the reality of living with half-crazed trickster, prankster, minister colleagues. And then they just kept on singing as if nothing had happened. They got me bad the first year, but the next year I got others by wearing the mask of solemn dignity. The title of this morning's reflection is The Beautiful Masks of Fellowship. It's about the disguises we wear and those that we choose not to wear. It's about the masks that help us to know ourselves and one another more deeply. You know, it strikes me that in this season of change, what we're really experiencing is, it is as if autumn wears the mask of summer. Our seasons are not 3 months long, but they're actually twice that. Our seasons are 6 months in length. It's just for 3 months they overlap like shingles on the season that comes before. So true autumn actually starts in early summer, and it hides for 3 months behind a mask of beach balls and barbecues, unmasking itself only at summer's end, showing its true colors. If this is true, then true winter starts around this time of year and hides for the same length of time behind masks of apples and fallen leaves. This happens for every season: winter, spring, summer, and fall. Carol and James used to sing about it, Carol King and James Taylor. They sang a wonderful song called You've Got a Friend. You may know it. When you're down and in trouble and you need a helping hand and nothing's going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you've got to do is call and I'll be there. I can feel my friends coming up. I find this to be like speech, like scripture, like the beautiful lesson of theology, a lesson in empathy, compassion, and deep pastoral care. There are pastoral care teams here at North Chapel, and we will be learning about these teams in November as we enter our time of gratitude and resilience. Caring for ourselves and one another is so important. You know, not everyone feels this way, but I truly and deeply believe that the Spirit's journey begins within. That it begins with asking for what we need. It is so very hard to do sometimes, but dear beloveds, it's so important. It helps to knit the community that we need to survive. This is a rich subject, worthy of open and public conversation and contest. Perhaps we can think about scheduling something sometime in the future. It's important to ask for what we need. I know this is hard in a culture of northern New England life. It's hard to reach out, and yet it is so very important. There is a song in our teal hymnal. I think it's 1021, I believe. It's Lean on Me by Bill Withers. And the passage that captures my heart appears in the second verse of the song. He sings, "Please swallow your pride if I have pains you need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show." So some say the Lord helps those who help themselves, and reaching out, I believe, is part of that process. Scatter beneath our feet the bravest flowers of your grace, and fill our sails, the sails of our souls, with power enough to push us on, lift us higher, to let us blossom fully and completely into this world. It is so hard, this hero's journey, and not everyone wants to walk the path, but doing so makes the shared work of ministry so powerful and healthy. Not everyone believes that they can ask for what they need, but it's so good when we do. We don't always get it, but it's healthy to ask. So good when we enter the journeys of our spiritual growth and wellness together. We are stronger when we remove the masks of separation. Pride is often the mask of something that is deeper in our faith. What is this? Some of us believe that we are supposed to get all of our ducks in a row, that we are supposed to have our lives ordered and all put together before we get ourselves to church. My mom is this way. She believes this. She and I go back and forth about this issue a great deal. We fight about it playfully. And she wins all the time because she's my mother, but not because she's right. I will pay for that. She wins. That's just for safety. She wins because she makes all the rules. She wins every time because she chooses to win. And that's the way it is, and I'm clear on that. And she's definitely clear on it. But I don't believe that winning is always good for her. My mother is a painter. She's been painting African masks for many years. My mom is a beautiful and deeply wise and lovely woman. She's very proud and fiercely protective of her husband, my dad, who's gone now. She's very proud and protective of her two children, me and Lisa. She came first. That was also for safety. Sometimes they watch these things and there's a price to pay. I just don't know if pride serves us very well. I wonder if it is the mask that covers something that is deeper and more subtle, something that lay beneath, something that overlaps in our spiritual lives like shingles on a roof. As our parents got older, they grew less able and willing to keep everything tidy around the house. And they hired someone to come in to help with the housework from time to time. But here's the thing. My mom would run around cleaning up the house before the housekeeper arrived. That's my mom. I don't know why she's this way, but she is. I love that woman to tears, to my very bones, and to my soul. I love her unconditionally and forever, but that does not mean that our relationship is free of conflict. It means the opposite. It means that we've learned to deal with and we've learned to grow from the conflict that we discover. Conflict is so challenging. Sometimes we may wonder why this is the case. Is it because we don't understand the values and the intentions of other people? Is it because we don't understand ourselves? Sometimes it's hard to talk to people who think differently than we do. I felt this acutely a month ago during the TEDx Heartland Hill weekend. A fellow presenter, a man named Tony McAleer, and I spent some time together. Tony wrote a book entitled the cure, let me show it to the people here, the cure for hate, a former white supremacist's journey from violent extremism to radical compassion. Over the course of that weekend, he and I spent many hours together. Sometimes it's hard to talk to the people whose paths in life are different from our own. Talk to those who think so much differently than we do. How does one deal with this? How do we see beyond the mask, beyond the outer surfaces of things? How do we find a way to move forward together? Now, I brought Tony McAleer to North Chapel on that Sunday. He wanted to be here with us. I lit a candle of joy and concern, and I used that part of our liturgy to share that I had just begun to make a friend. And then I asked Tony to introduce himself. He shared his name and he shared his journey. He shared that he used to participate in violent extremism. He gave me his copy of his book. I said, thanks. He inscribed it. The inscription reads, "To Leon, pleasure to meet you at TEDx Woodstock. Curiosity, courage, compassion." These were the 3 words that he lives by. These are the words that pierce through his mask of hatred, fear, and violence. He begins his book in this way: before the shaved head and the Doc Martens, before the anger and the street violence, before the anti-immigrant rhetoric, the Holocaust denial, the white supremacist phone line, before the pain and loneliness, there was little Tony. Who was that little boy? That core essence deep down inside. Little Tony was an open, bright, sensitive, curious, shy, stubborn, mischievous, and funny little fellow who was open to the wonder of the world around him. I'm conflicted about reading his book. My library is already straining, already heavy with the physical weight and with the metaphysical weight of the subject of racism and its discontents. I'll have to pray on this. I don't like conflict. It's a real-life pain in the neck, but it can be so insightful if we handle it artfully. Handled artfully, conflict can reveal something that is far more beautiful, but is in disguise. Maybe conflict is a mask. The book of Proverbs says, whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. What happens when we take off the mask of hate? The Gospel of Matthew says, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. What happens when the sheep costume is removed? The Gospel of Luke says, nothing is covered up that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be known. And of boastful men, 2 Corinthians says, such men are false apostles, deceitful working men, disguising themselves as apostles. It says that even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. It is no surprise then if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Not everyone loves the Bible, but I find it fascinating and so helpful in life sometimes. I like this passage from Corinthians, and regardless of one's opinions about the Bible, Corinthians is familiar to many of us because of the famous passage about love. Although I speak in tongues of men and angels, I'm just sounding brass and tinkling cymbals without love. If I had the gift of prophecy and all knowledge and the faith to move the mountains, if I didn't have love, I'd be nothing. This is a familiar passage, but we don't really understand its context. The context happens, the quote really shouldn't be taken out of its context. I have a colleague in Maryland, and she says, for as long as 2 or more have gathered in the name of Spirit, they have found themselves in conflict. She says, you remember perhaps the classical chestnut of a wedding reading from Corinthians, which says, if I speak in tongues of mortals or of angels and do not have love, I am only resounding gong or clanging cymbals. If I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. Nancy further explained, and insightfully, I think, that the letter from Apostle Paul to the Christian community in Corinth has nothing whatsoever to do with the ushy-gushy romantic sentiment that it is so often associated with at weddings, that the letter was from an overextended pastor with occasionally dubious judgment to a congregation whose leaders were in a constant state of fierce and unremitting conflict. They were shouting at each other like gubernatorial candidates in Florida. They were shouting prayers like clanging cymbals. They were beating one another with the word of God. They were in conflict. How does one bring peace to a moment like this? Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, once said, if there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Scatter beneath our feet, beloved, the beauty of life's blessings. Scatter beauty like rose petals, like autumn leaves descending. Winds, fill the sails of our spirit with the power to push us on and lift us high. May it be so. Blessed be and amen.